Hi everyone, it's Kat here. Today's video is going to be more specific. I know that I've said a couple of things that I'm going to say in this video before, but I really want to stress these points because I have two objective, incontrovertible pieces of evidence that show that my dad really wasn't a threat to society. I have one really important one that also shows, how he was not a threat. And I just feel as if it's a very important point that does need to be stressed because of what they ended up doing later. And so I hope you enjoy my video. So first I'm going to start with the statement that I do personally believe that my father is innocent. It is my personal opinion. I've looked at facts. I know my father, of course, personally. And I believe that he was innocent. I think that was a miscarriage of justice for him to be convicted, especially when the DA was knowingly creating charges, use of force, because he wanted to carry out a threat. I just think that the entire situation was unfair, and it's my personal opinion. But I know that others out there have other opinions, and they might think otherwise or be on the edge. So, for argument's sake, let us assume that he was guilty. But then we should think about what exactly was he convicted of. So, for one, he was convicted of 3 counts of oral copulation, meaning that one of them stimulated the other's genitals using their mouth. This allegedly occurred during the 3 times that they were alone together on hikes with each other. Now, another was the use of force charge, which was supposed to be solely in the mind of the boy with no external expressing of being forced into anything or anything like that. It was just supposed to be in his mind where he just felt subconsciously or consciously. It was just in a state of mind that he felt that he had to do whatever an adult told him to, or in this case, my father. And he was forced to do it, even if he never expressed that he was unhappy about it. So for what ended up happening after 1997, it does not matter whether he was guilty or innocent, because he had already paid for his crime. He started moving on with his life. Years had passed, and he was declared by the government that he was rehabilitated. And so what was done after 1997 was completely unconstitutional, and it sheds light on millions of violations of the constitutional rights of millions of U.S. citizens by the U.S. government, because I can guarantee to you that they did not just violate my father's rights. They have violated countless people's rights, and they will continue doing it. So, the first objective evidence that I have that is one of the smoking guns is from 1997. It is a report from forensic psychologist Dr. Sharma, PhD. And I think it's really important. I have looked at it in a video before, but I'm going to look at it more specifically, talk about it more, because it is really important. This is a professional. It is their job to look into people, to comprehend what kind of person they are, to figure out what they are like, and if they are a threat, things like that. I mean, this is an MD, PhD, forensic psychologist. I mean, they are professional. They did not know my father personally. They do not currently know my father personally. They were just doing their job, looking into my father, then interviewing him. And so, the report that I have, it is pretty much their opinion that they expressed on whether or not my father should get a certificate of rehabilitation and what they thought my father's risk was and stuff like that. And they said things that, like, his behavior in the last 16 years demonstrates a pro-social attitude and lack of pedophilic disorder. And I believe he can refrain from antisocial behavior in the future. In his present mental state, he is not a risk of harm to the community, including minors. So, this is a professional. They looked into this. They are putting their personal word in, saying that my father is not a risk. And this is from 1997. So this is in the courts, in the court papers, in documents. It's an official report saying that my father is not a risk, including to minors. And if I go on reading, another important point. He has remained free of sexually inappropriate behavior with minors for about 16 years. There is no history of substance abuse. No sexual deviation since 1982 are reported. He has graduated from a university and has obtained gainful employment. His social interactions are free of major conflicts. And some points I really, really want to stress. I mean, no history of substance abuse, no sexual deviations since 1982. He has graduated and obtained employment. But especially the no substance abuse. I mean, again, it's a professional looking into him. This is their job. And they are stating that he is not a risk, that he does not have any issues with substance abuse, that he is not having sexual deviations. I mean, I think that it's just really important because what they end up doing after this, how they up the ante, how they say that he is a druggie and an alcoholic and dangerous and violent, things like that, is wrong. It's unconstitutional. I don't even want to think about how many other people might have had the same thing happen to them, because these are objective documents, objective proof that he is not a danger, that he does not have issues with substance abuse, that he is a good person, and then they turn that all around just to make his life a living hell and to make his family's life a living hell. They did it on purpose. They came up with this stuff, and it's unconstitutional. It is not right. I mean, they were literally trying to drive us out by making our lives into a living hell, by coming up with things like saying that my father has drug issues, that my father has alcoholism issues, that my father is violent and dangerous. They upped his risk after getting a certificate of rehabilitation, even though there are documents like this that say the exact opposite. So the next piece of evidence I have that's another smoking gun is my father's certificate of rehabilitation, which I have here. It was signed by Judge Stephan Zülliger, and it just shows that they did end up ruling that my father is extremely low risk. They decided that he is not a large threat, that they will go along with everything that was said, and they will put their faith in the fact that there is a very, very teeny tiny low chance that he will ever commit any other crime in terms of this. And so at the time, there was supposed to be a law that he could use this to get off of having to register ever again. And so this is a really big deal. This paper, this document, what they granted him is a huge deal. And the fact that he still had to register afterwards, that he never got the chance to get off of the registry, is another one. Because that is part of where all the issues were. He should have been allowed to get off the registry. This should have, even if he couldn't get off the registry, this should have been proof enough that he is not a risk. He is not, it's not worth upping his risk later when he has something like this. And I think that is a very important point. I think that it's very important to understand because they completely ignored it. It didn't matter that he could come up, wave this around, and say, I have a certificate of rehabilitation. I'm a low risk. Why are you going to publicly identify? And he could do that all he wanted. They wouldn't listen. And so I think it's a very important point. I think that it is definitely something to pay attention to. And I don't know. Take what you want from it. So this next piece of evidence is, in my opinion, a very strong piece of evidence, but it is also close to my heart because it comes from one of our family friends who has known my father for over 30 years, since 1980. And so I think that this letter just represents a lot, including what kind of person my father is, as well as what the government has done. And so I'm just going to read some highlighted important parts that I think just are really good to know. I will read them one after another and then talk about it at the end. If you want to read the entire letter, go onto my website because it will be there and you can read everything. He is not the kind of person that would hurt other people, even when someone does something bad to him. He stays calm and reasonable. Out of his free time, I could see he spent most of it doing things for those around him. When I read what the government says about him in the mailing they sent out, if I did not know him, I would react very badly to it. I'd be thinking, what scum, they should just keep him locked up for life. I feel very strongly against child molesters. He is not a sexual predator and not someone who seeks out friendships with children for the purpose of having sex. I've known him a long time and I know he is a good guy. I not only knew him during the time he was supposed to have committed the crime, but he was my best friend then. We spent a lot of time together and were even roommates for a year. If you wanted to call him a game fanatic, a sci-fi buff, and a techno geek, I would say you were right. But when the justice system calls him a dangerous sex offender who is an alcoholic and a drug addict, then they are totally wrong on all accounts. He has never been the kind of person to harm anyone for any reason. I know that in the early 1980s he made some friends with younger kids. He was going through the stage of making friends with everyone. But I spent a lot of time with him, and whatever amount of time he was spending being friends with some kids in the neighborhood, it was not much time. He was clearly more interested in spending time doing things with older people, capable of adult-level games like Squad Leader or GURPS. He says he occasionally drinks, but to me he does not drink. While I cannot know for sure if he was guilty because I was not there, I feel in my heart that he was innocent. But even if he was guilty, he served his time. It should be a violation of the U.S. Constitution to keep adding punishment to him, especially when now they are punishing his family as well. So this letter to me represents how good of a person my father is and what kind of a person he is and how what they end up adding when they put out that written pamphlet, how they were saying that my father was violent and a drug addict and an alcoholic, how it's complete nonsense. It came out of nowhere. It was out of thin air. And I just think that it is very unconstitutional, and it's a good thing to keep in mind. And, I mean, this is someone who feels very strongly about child molesters. He said it himself in this letter, how he feels very strongly, but he's still best friends with my father. He still knows my father very well. He knew him before any of this happened. And he stuck by his friendship with writing this letter. And this letter was written after the public identification happened, so it is after 1997. It's a later letter. But I think it's still very important. It has a lot of very important aspects to it. It shows that really, he's not the kind of person that was described in the public identification. And I think that if they describe my father this way, how many incorrect descriptions of other people do they have out there? And how is it constitutional to just come up with things off of the top of their heads, put it into official writing, and then publicly identify people who are not dangerous, who have been given certificates of rehabilitation, who have been considered pretty much safe and extremely low risk and everything like that, and then they suddenly publicly identify them and ruin not only their lives, but the lives of everyone around them. It's not right. It's unconstitutional. It's, in my opinion, incorrect morally, and I do think that it is something that needs to be pressed. It is something that needs to be stressed. It's something that needs to be understood because it is wrong. It hurts people. It can send people over the edge, and it needs to be known. So I hope this video was useful and informational, and I hope you enjoyed it.